Alright, what's up, my gnomies? This is going to be a gnome grown gardening update. It is currently spring on the west side of Oahu, the sunny, dry side. And I'm going to go through and just kind of walk the grounds, check out the beds, talk about what I've been doing and where things are at. Might have been a little while since the last update, but I do want to keep this channel going. I really like the idea of kind of gardening or documenting the journey, something I've said before, and you know been gardening now about 15 years, different places all over the world. And the thing about gardening and growing plants in general is that no matter what your experience is in one place, you're gonna have to get out there and try it where you're at, right? Gardening is a hyper local thing, and no matter what about doing it, maybe in Vermont, it's just not going to apply when you go down to do it in Florida. And so we're out here in Hawaii, and I've been growing this garden now for about 18 months, and just want to talk about where things are at, successes, failures, blah blah blah. So here we go. Right on. All right, so right here you see I've got about 15 papayas planted. My first papaya I put in over there in that corner, and you can check that out in earlier videos. And I ended up having to pull it out and move it because I decided that side of the yard was going to be best for my raised beds. And so I did try to put a bed around it and just see if I could plant around the papaya. But their stems are very sensitive to having too much leaf litter or material around them. So I ended up having to pull that out. But it's all good because I got, so many more planted. And as you can see here, we are fruiting. It is still spring. So, as long as these guys have plenty of water and plenty of heat, they're going to keep fruiting. And, last year, even off one papaya, I was getting more papaya than I can handle, so I don't know what I was thinking planting 15. But what's really nice about them is at this point in the yard, they offer us a little bit of a privacy screen against the street there, so that's pretty cool. Now right here, I had a calamondin planted originally, and that died. I'm not sure what happened there. I was in the mainland for that. So I've got a ruby grapefruit to replace it, but I'm going to do a little bit of work on the soil there to fix it up. And then I'm going to trim that bush behind it back to give that ruby a little more light. In the back here, we got a volunteer orange. That's from an orange tree that I cut down. You can see part of the stump there still in the fence. I'm going to let that guy go. It's definitely a bit of a wild orange. It's got long thorns, but it tastes like a navel, so it's just nice to have some extra citrus around. So I'm gonna keep that. All right, we're gonna start over here. We're gonna start over here and cover this guy first. So this is a yuzu that I got planted not too long ago. I'm pretty familiar with yuzu. I've been growing them for a couple years, and this one, I think this one might be a hybrid. I'm not too sure. I've got one hybrid, one pure yuzu. And you can see it's got some new growth coming out here. But I've been very surprised at how slow they've been. And I'm interested to see how they do this summer. I've always treated yuzu basically like a hardy citrus. And I'm surprised that on the west side, I'm seeing it struggle a little bit more. It's done very well for me in hot and cold areas before. Now here, this thing I picked up, this was advertised, I want to say, as a Filipino lime, but I actually think this might actually be a calamondin. And here's its fruits down here, and you can see also, look down at the stem, it's not grafted. So this is from seed, which also makes me think it's a calamondin. And then these fruits they're not pendant the way I would expect a lime to be. So I'm not actually sure this is a lime. I think this is actually a calamondin, but it's doing so well that I'm gonna let it go for a while. I'll be really bummed if I I don't know. I'm not sure how Calamondin are. I've heard good things and they're fairly popular out here, but not my favorite. A little bitter. So, and then here we've got a Mexican lime that is looking more like a ground cover than a lime, but it's crushing it. Just putting out tons of new foliage. This has been, I started this from a $12 start that was maybe 8 inches tall. Got it at just the hardware store. Had it in a pot for the first couple months, then put it in the ground and just keep loving it, keep fertilizing it. It's doing great. I'm gonna come over here. Let's talk about these beds for a minute. So I copied the design that everyone does on for raised beds on YouTube. It's a pretty simple standard bed design. And as you can see here, I've got all mine filled at this point. Now, I only filled mine about halfway for the initial pass. That's because I really wanted mine to settle before doing the full load of soil. So I'm planning on growing in these at about half full for this season. And then, I'll be buying in soil and filling these again. It's a definite consideration out here as the cost of soil is not trivial. And with 7 of these beds at 4 foot by, 2.5 foot by 8 foot, that's a non-trivial amount of soil to bring in. But yeah, not a ton going on in this bed at this moment, but over here, this has been kind of the kale herb bed over here. Got a big rack of beets going that these guys are actually almost on their way out. I've pretty much eaten all the beets out of this bed. And then this is going to be getting refertilized, turned over, and put into watermelon here soon. This bed here has been kind of the renegade bed. It got a lot of the stuff that really didn't have another home, and you'll notice that I've got a bunch of lettuce in here going to seed. It's pretty intentional. I've been trying to acclimate seeds as I go along, and so this is all Butter Crunch that I've let go to seed, and as well as a bunch of rainbow chard, and then we've got some kale in here, and then there's some kalo right there. That kalo is going to get lifted up and put into another place eventually, but for now it's just kind of on survival mode. This was the pepper bed last year. All right, over here, this is a Murashige avocado. That's kind of the Hawaii favorite avocado. And you can see here, even though it's the first year, we do have some little avocados going already. I will say there has been a substantial amount of fruit shedding over the last couple of weeks. I had about 30 avocados when it flowered, and now I'm down to maybe 3 or 4. I don't entirely expect them to go all the way. It is the first year, however, for this tree, and we're going to step back a little bit further, and I want you to take note of how I planted it and where I planted it. So here we've got it kind of sitting beneath the plumeria, and we're going to come and take it from this angle too. And I want you to notice what the tree is doing, and that the tree is kind of growing out and away from the plumeria, and that was really intentional, is that I'm trying to really fill the space over here, and eventually I want to have a lot of this under canopy, so it's a lot cooler in the yard. We are on the west side and it gets particularly hot out here. So the more shade I can offer the yard, the more pleasant of an experience it's going to be out here. So yeah, this is the only cultivar avocado I have right now. And again, it's the first year, but this came in at about 24 inches tall, and now I would say it's about 6'5". And it's really doing spectacular. And I did the hill planting technique, but I think that was really overkill. The soil here has excellent drainage, and there's really no worry for avocados. In fact, if one were so inclined, this valley would be an excellent place to grow an avocado orchard. All right, coming over here, we got our Eureka lemon. That's what this is. And this is an interesting one because this lemon really struggled for the first, I'd say, 6 months of it, if it's being in the ground. we have a lot of aphids here, and they're definitely something you have to address and deal with. And I am planning on topping this tree eventually once it gets kind of big and established. But yeah, it fought through the aphids, and now that we're getting into the dry season, it's we're not seeing any of the kind of aphid infestations you would normally see, or I'm used to seeing on the new growth, and I haven't had to do a neem treatment since the winter. All right, here we've got a cacao, and I've got a little experiment running with the cacao. So I've got one planted out here, and as you can see, we've got an excellent view to sky, and we're looking at probably, 80+% sunny in this spot. It's not a particularly, we've got a little shade coming in from the plumeria, but it really is pretty sunny right here. And once you kind of take note of how it's doing, we can kind of dig in here and look at the stems down here. And I still don't quite know on cacao how to approach it. I'm wondering if I should have separated out the plants. There's actually 3 plants in there, but that's the way it came planted, and so I just figured the horticulturalists know better and went with how they had it planted. So it doesn't seem to be an issue that they're so tightly packed, and it's doing fine. It's just a pretty slow growing plant. Yeah, so all right, we're going to come over here and we're going to talk about this guy. So this is my vanilla orchid. And this vanilla orchid has been in the ground for pretty much the entire time that I've been here, so almost 2 years. And what we got going on here is really actually multiple vanilla vines coming out of the ground, and then I'm wrapping them up and around a plumeria. I've also put some bromeliads in with the vanilla vine in a hope to hopefully catch a little extra water, and they really do seem to be digging each other. The vanilla vine grabs and holds on to the bromeliad, and then the bromeliad holds on to a little bit of additional water and maybe some debris that comes from the plumeria. So I'm hoping that I can continue to grow the bromeliads to help support the vanilla vine. And the most exciting thing about the vanilla vine is right here. We got our first flower, and so we're gonna have vanilla. I'm not sure when. I've never grown. Been growing vanilla for almost 10 years, but I've never actually had one flower before. So this is a bit of a journey. We're gonna see how that flowering event goes. I do know that I'm gonna have to manually pollinate that, and I do have a reference guide on how to do so. So I might make a video around pollinating vanilla at that time, or my poor attempt at pollinating vanilla. So a couple other things. One of the big lessons learned that I've had about vanilla while I've been growing it is really you got a lot of veg management to do. Vanilla is, in this climate, just an incredible grower, which is awesome, right? It just wants to go and go and go. But the issue that you're going to face is it wants to go up and the soil is down. And so how do you deal with that? And you can see that it puts out a lot of these tendrils that are going to come down here, and those are looking for pockets of soil, and they will find just about anything they can to kind of notch into and find some bit of nutrition or water. And you can see it kind of doing it again there. Now the issue is that this is a jungle plant wanting to find patches of soil on the way down, and the reality is we don't really have any. So that's kind of what I'm trying to simulate up here with this the bromeliads up here at the top. Now, I've got 2 approaches I've taken to trying to get the vine to get closer to the soil, because ultimately that's my goal. And you can see here, it does want to send its tendrils all the way down to the soil. And you can see some of these are pretty close to making it. In fact, I think that one might make it. And kind of my suspicion is that once it can get some tendrils down to the soil, as long as those tendrils can get established, it will put up new vines in those locations. So it's really important to get it to go back down to the ground. So one method I've been using to try to get it to go down to the ground is to basically force train the vine downwards. And that has been pretty difficult. You can see here, this vine actually starts way up at the top, and then I've been kind of putting weights on it as it grows, and you can see I've got this board right now sitting on it. I've been putting weights on it as it grows to try to get it to grow towards the ground, and it's working okay, but it's a pretty manual and tedious process. The other method that I've been using is this one here, where instead of growing it down, I'm actually growing it up on a string, and then I just keep moving the string and moving where the vine sits on the string. Sorry, I got a fly landed in my coffee. That's no good. Moving where the vine sits on the string, and then kind of my goal here is going to be to get that vine long enough that I can take it all the way to the ground, wrap it around, and then send it back up, with the goal of getting a couple tendrils to actually get into the soil, which is really the most important part, is reattaching those tendrils to the soil. And the more tendrils I can get into the soil, the more vine I'm going to have in the long run. And eventually I'd like to see this whole plumeria just completely covered in vanilla vines. And, you know, that'd be great. All right, a couple other updates. I did have to pull the blueberry. I had a blueberry here. I heard the blueberries did okay out here, and I've grown them in areas that are hot and dry before and had no issues, as long as they stay sufficiently watered in the right times of year. But I had to pull that one, put it in a pot. What was interesting is, even though the veg was doing really poorly, the roots looked great. And with blueberries, you really don't want to disturb the roots. So we'll see how it does. It might be done, but you know, we'll see. See if I can find it a place in the yard where it's actually happy. So over here we got a bit of a bean patch going, and this is the first round of acclimated beans. So I already grew a harvest of beans in this bed once. This is going to be the second harvest of beans that's going on now. And these beans were taken from the beans that were grown here previously. So we might see some hybridization, because I did grow 2 varieties. But I'm not too concerned about that. I don't mind. They were both bush varieties, so as long as we get bush out of it, that's all that I really care for. And these will be for green beans, but the real goal here is to develop some acclimated seeds that are going to be pretty vigorous. I would say that the last round was not particularly vigorous, so hopefully this round will be a little more vigorous. And then, of course, even if they aren't particularly vigorous, I can just plant a lot more seeds if I have a lot more seeds. And if they're not vigorous, I just plant more seeds. And I like doing dense plantings and letting the seeds, the plants themselves, compete for space. So you can see it's pretty thick with beans here. And I don't think I'll have too much trouble getting a harvest out of that. Ultimately, I see this bed as producing probably about, probably on the order of about a meal of beans every other day. So it'll be a lot of beans coming out of here. I'll be sharing with the neighbors. That'll be great. All right, coming over here, we've got... Why am I not... I am still recording. Coming over here, we've got a pepper bed that I've started, and it's onions and peppers. I really like to companion crop onions with just about anything else that's going to be more of a permanent, kind of perennial type vegetable. Which you might be hearing that and going, Aaron, peppers aren't a perennial vegetable. Well, it depends where you live. In that pepper bed over here, I grew peppers for almost 2 years. Same pepper plants, producing the whole time. And the only reason they died was because I had to rely on other people to water them. Here, these are bell peppers. I'm not sure they'll go on the same cycle, but you know, with care and maintenance, I expect to be able to get two seasons at least out of all of these pepper plants. And so they'll be producing for a real long time. And they're going to require some staking and some management, but onions are a great companion for a plant that's going to be there a while, mainly because of the form. And notice that, like, you know, these peppers have fairly broad leaves and are going kind of side to side, where the onions want to go very vertically. And when you have a situation like that, I just think it's a great opportunity to do a companion planting as well. You know, onions are kind of stinky, and they might chase some of the same pests that the peppers have away. So, yeah. Awesome. So this bed sits empty and is kind of acting as my soil reservoir for now. You can see some of my leftovers from planting earlier. I've been burying any dead animals I find and random compost into this bed for a while. No intentions of planting it out this season, although I might reconsider that with the number of starts that I've got going. All right, coming this way, and we're going to come back to cacao and talk about cacao again. So here we've got the same variety of cacao planted over here, and this is in a much shadier space. So this is at least max 60%, 40% sunlight. This is a very dark space in the yard. We've got a full canopy over our heads here. And so this has been doing about as well as the other plant. Maybe not as vigorous, but not looking bad at all. Definitely a little slower, but about the same height if it has a few less leaves. And the leaves actually do seem kind of healthier in some ways. So this is a really interesting experiment. I'm excited to see how it goes, kind of which is better, full sunlight or partial sunlight for cacao. All right, we're going to come over here. So here we've got a mandarin. This is one that, again, almost died due to having to have a babysitter for my plants, and lost all its leaves, but I was able to bring it back. So you can see it's got a lot of really young leaves, but it is flowering right now. And come over here so we can get a better view. And so I'm going to let this one flower and produce all those, but I just put it in the ground a couple days ago, and you can see it did suffer a little bit of burn from getting into the ground, but I think it'll be fine. And this spot in particular is a good spot. It is a very full sunlight spot. Our sun's going to come up over that mountain right there, and it's going to transverse this way. And it'll set over there. So it'll get 12 hours of sunlight a day. All right, over here, got a couple volunteer agaves or aloes, but not really planning on doing anything with those. Those were just in the yard when I got here. This here is a lychee, and it's been in the ground 2 months, and it's looking really good. So then we've got just a couple other random plants that are in the nursery, some rosemary. This is where I've been kind of managing my starts, and you can see I've kind of got them going all the way back to there. I've got some plumerias planted to fill in some gaps in the yard. Then here we have another yuzu, and again with the yuzus, I was trying to figure out, all right, who's going to do better, a cold spot in the yard or a hot spot in the yard? Now this was a much larger tree when it came in, so it also is putting out some new growth right now. But really, I would say they're doing about comparable. I don't think one is necessarily doing better than the other in terms of new growth. So we'll see how it goes over time. My assumption is that if this one can get big enough to kind of get over the fence here and get some sunlight, I think this one will win. But that one has the advantage of full sunlight already, so we'll see. Got some avocados that are getting grown up for planting elsewhere in the yard. In the back here, I've got my Australia finger lime, and it's funny. It occupied the same spot in the yard that the blueberry did formerly, and it did really poorly in that spot as well. And the soil looks awesome there. I don't think it's the soil. I just think that it's really interesting trying to grow a variety of plants here, where you have a mix of both very, very warm loving plants and also very kind of cool, moist loving plants. And the Australia finger lime is definitely in that cool, moist loving side of the house. So I moved it back here where it's going to be a lot more shaded. It's shaded by this banana that I planted, as well as this coral tree. And it only gets maybe about 6 hours of sunlight a day, and it seems to be doing a lot better over here. Got a couple banana starts that I took off the main trunk of this dwarf Cavendish. And this dwarf Cavendish has been in the ground for about a year. And so it's about 12 feet tall, maybe a bit taller. Maybe 10 feet at the center where the branching breaks off, and maybe 12 feet to the tallest leaf. And then it's put off about 4 banana starts at the base. So you can see here we've got one. Here's a little one coming up right there. And then these 2 I cut off and repotted. I want to move those to the front of the yard and have another banana patch. But these 2 smaller ones I plan on letting go. All right, gonna finish it up here real quick. So here's the blueberry that I moved, as well as a bunch of starts, and then my other banana. Yeah, and that's it. That's all the plants. I don't think I missed anything. I'm gonna keep this one pretty short, even though we're already at like 30 minutes. Just wanted to have something to update the channel with. I'll get in and do some more updates later, but life has been extremely busy. But I just want the channel to know, like, things are still going. We're still planting plants. The gnome grown lifestyle is still going. It's just it's a day by day thing. And I try to get out here, plant a plant every day. Try to get out here, weed a weed every day, a little bit. And it's really coming along. So, in the next couple months and years, you're gonna see this garden's gonna be explosive in terms of its growth. Anyways, that's it. That's your update. Hope you enjoyed it. I was hoping to catch a little bit more of a sunrise here, but it's such a pretty day. Plumerias are just blowing up, and it's going to be a great day. Here we've got the mountains. So anyways, stay gnome grown, and we'll talk soon. Bye.